discussing the issues and celebrating the successes of the African American community. This is Another View.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Lee. Tonight, Another View is a year old. We started this program on February 5th, 2009. A bit later in the program, we'll talk with the folks who make Another View happen. But right now, in celebration of our first anniversary and Black History Month, we decided to talk with some people in Hampton Roads who made history by breaking the color barrier. They were first, and they're here to share their stories with us. Please welcome Delceno Miles, the first African-American chair of the Hampton Roads Chamber of Commerce; George Wallace, the first African-American city manager of the city of Hampton; Judge Eileen A, the first African-American female of the First Judicial District of Virginia; and Howard Gwynn, the first African-American Commonwealth attorney in Newport News. Welcome to Another View, everybody.
Thank you.
Man, it's some heavy-hitting, you know, I'm really proud of y'all. I have to say. Now, I know you all each have a unique story, and I'm going to kind of ask you to condense it a little bit, but talk to me about how you became the first chair of the Chamber of Commerce. First of all, the Chamber's been around for 200?
Since 1801.
Since 1801.
And I became chair in 2002.
Wow, it took a long time.
Yes, I was the third woman at the time, but the first African American, still, unfortunately, the only African American. Certainly, we have some work to do. There are many able leaders who are willing to step up, so we're hoping that will change soon.
Did you go out seeking that position, or were you?
Yes,
so
actually.
Okay.
I'm not one to sit back and react, so I'm more proactive, and so more or less created the opportunity. Certainly paid my dues. Worked in just about every position there was as a volunteer, and saw the benefits of, as a business owner, of networking with the premier business advocacy organization in the area. And
thus rose to the top.
Thus rose. So I've
Absolutely.
been a part of the chamber a good 20 years.
Okay, George, you had two firsts. The first African-American city manager and the first assistant city manager in all of Hampton Roads. Is that correct?
That's correct.
In terms of being an African-American.
That's correct.
Were you born and raised here? How did you get to that position?
Oh, it's kind of a circuitous route. I was born and raised in Williamsburg. I was working in Norfolk prior to becoming an assistant city manager in Hampton. I was running a regional training authority here that encompassed the 7 cities on the south side here in Hampton Roads. And my board of directors were the mayors of the cities on the south side. And Hampton was reorganizing its operation, and they were seeking to bring in 3 assistant city managers. I applied, and I was selected.
Did you know you were the first?
Yes.
At the time, you did?
Yes,
okay.
I did. We had just, at that particular time, gotten our first African-American on the city council, a couple of years prior to my assuming my role there. And so I knew I would be the first in that particular capacity. Okay.
Judge Olds.
Yes.
First woman to, and first African-American in the First Judicial District. That's huge.
That's huge.
Is it something that you work towards specifically?
Well, when I say it's huge for the community, and that's what I attribute my appointment to. I didn't have the traditional route. I don't think any of us did, but it was at a time when the community began to make that cry for diversity in the judicial system of all things. I mean, in the court system, you would think fairness and equality was something that was paramount, but at that time, there were hardly any African Americans even in clerical positions within the courts.
What year was it?
1995. It took until
okay,
95.
So it wasn't that long ago.
Not that long ago.
Wasn't that long ago.
No.
Howard.
Yes, ma'am.
First and only, correct?
Yes.
Because you've been elected and still hold the position of Commonwealth's attorney.
Yes.
Was that something you strove for?
What I found in the course of my life that God will provide opportunities, and oftentimes you don't have to seek jobs. Jobs will oftentimes find you. I was working in Portsmouth for an attorney in Portsmouth from Newport News, from the Southeast community. Didn't really like working in Portsmouth, wanted to get back over to the peninsula, wasn't making any money. So I came over to Newport News one day to talk to a friend of mine who was in practice in Newport News. And so we talked about opening up a private practice, what it would cost. She gave me the opportunity to come and work with her, but then she said, well, there's a job in the Commonwealth Attorney's Office. I think it's still available. They're looking for an assistant. Now, I didn't really want to prosecute in my hometown because I didn't think that would be such a good idea.
You might run into some people you know.
Did in fact run into a lot of folk I knew. And so things just came together where I know, like I said, it wasn't me, it was God providing an opportunity. Because I asked her where the Commonwealth Attorney's office was. I didn't know. Her office was in a 3-story building on the 2nd floor. I said, where's the Commonwealth Attorney's office? She said, right on the 3rd floor. If it had been any place else, I wouldn't have gone to it. So I went on the elevator, went to the 3rd floor. The Commonwealth Attorney was not there. My parents lived 5 minutes from the office, so I figured if I came back to the south side, I wasn't coming back to the office. So I went to my parents' house, waited for about 20 minutes, called the Commonwealth Attorney. He was in, talked to him for a few minutes about the job, met some of his staff members, came back the next day. Started May 1st, 1982. Been there ever since.
1982. I've been there ever since.
And
let's talk philosophically for a moment. Each of you, I noticed, with the exception of you, George, you went to a HBCU Central, but the rest of you went to predominantly white schools, graduated with honors. Do you think that prepared you to be more inclusive, more adaptable, to be able to take on these roles as first?
I don't think it gave me that much more of an advantage. Certainly Stanford opened some doors, but certainly HBCUs have a long history of having birthing leaders. So
yeah, and I don't mean to say that HBCUs don't produce those, but what I'm wondering is, do you think, as people looked at your credentials and so forth, that they may have been, white people in general, or people who are not African American, more comfortable because you had that more diverse experience, I guess is what I'm looking for?
It hasn't been an issue with me as much. People have been impressed, if you will, but I think that certainly being in that multicultural environment did help. But then high school was that way for me too. I didn't go to an all-black school. I went to Cox High School, which was perhaps 0.0019 black. So, and I was the only black in a lot of the sports teams and a lot of the clubs and things like that. I took advantage of a lot of those things that my classmates, my black classmates, did not. And there were only 2 honor graduates in the class of '79, me and one other. So we were there. It's just a matter of taking advantage of those things that are made available to us.
But you're high achievers. You achieved a great deal. You have, go ahead.
I got a comment on that, particularly being the graduate of an HBCU. My first experience in the environment of integrated, in terms of a work environment, was in the military. And when I got there, I found out that I not only was capable, but I've generally exceeded everybody else's performance in the context of what I did and in my academic IQ. So that gave me the confidence that I needed to know that I could serve and serve well in any environment. So my process in terms of getting that particular experience was the military.
Was the military for you. But both of you two, all of you, are very high achievers. I mean, that's something else also, I think, that kind of catapults you towards that kind of achievement, don't you think?
I think success comes from within. I mean, certainly you have to be prepared. As you said, you have to pay your dues. But in terms of whether or not I personally was more well prepared because of my choice of college, I don't think so. But I definitely think it negates that whole excuse of not having adequate qualifications, because when you sit in the same classrooms and you get that education, me being University of Virginia and William & Mary, which we could spend another hour talking about what it was like to be in those classrooms, but it certainly makes the playing field more level.
Well, but then also, Howard, because you went to Dartmouth?
I did.
Right, that's what I thought. Because you were in classes where you were the minority, did it make it easier for you to be able to navigate, because you were still, all of you, the minority once you got your positions?
Well, I think going to Dartmouth opened up a whole new arena for me, because unlike Delceno, I went to all African American elementary school and all African American high school, and lived in an African American neighborhood, so that my contact with majority community was very limited when I was growing up. So going to Dartmouth, in addition to the fact that it was predominantly all white, and given the fact where it was in Hanover, New Hampshire, I mean, it was a tremendous culture shock for me. And it took a lot of adjusting on my part. I was really unhappy up there at first, and fortunately for me, the junior students and I became really good friends. And he said, well, look, we have a lot of off-campus programs here, so you can be a Dartmouth student but not be here. And so I had the opportunity during my sophomore year and during my senior year to go to Sierra Leone, West Africa. So I spent, a quarter out of the country. And so by the time I came back to Dartmouth, I'd already been up there for 3 years, and so I ended up staying. But I think my exposure to the majority community and the opportunities that you get exposed to at a place like Dartmouth obviously was tremendously beneficial.
Once you attained the positions, and we're talking about your first positions, were you expected to be the expert on all things African American? Did you experience, any of you experience that, George?
I don't think it's the perception that you needed to be the expert, particularly in my area, which is kind of a service environment. But you were expected to be the savior and a benefactor and the deliverer of all things to the minority community, and that's kind of a tough road.
So you
to have
felt
to deal with.
more of the pressure from the African American community in terms of their expectation of what you could do for them.
Correct.
Or for it, excuse me. Did you experience that?
Not through the chamber, but through my business.
Okay.
Where
yes, because you have the oldest, arguably the oldest African American business in a PR firm in Virginia Beach.
Yeah, I was just sharing this off camera with one of our guests that the pressure comes where they'll pull you more towards the community side, understanding that we're a business, and so I work for profit, and people tend not to understand that I have to have a balance. I can't just be all community, and certainly I'm sensitive to the needs of the community, but there's only so many checks you can write, and certainly want to be supportive and understanding of some of the needs, but it's a two-way street. It needs to be a true partnership.
And so people need to hire you as their business also, from a business perspective as well as the community. Judge Old.
I think we can all agree there are heightened expectations, and as you said, we get called upon to do things that certainly our colleagues are not. But I think what was more salient to me was the scrutiny. You think, you've gone through the ranks, you've practiced law, now you're a judge, and the community's perception of a judge, which is not an accurate perception necessarily, but is that, we do what we want to do, and when the judge speaks and rules, that's pretty much it. But when you are an African American, and I would say an African American woman in particular, the scrutiny is
of your decisions,
the scrutiny of decisions, just in general. There's the title and the position is there, but the privileges don't necessarily come by virtue of the fact that you reach that same rank. You agreeing, huh?
Do people think that you should cut them a break?
Sure, absolutely.
Because simply because they're African American?
Well, I think people think prosecutors should cut them a break anyway. But I think as an African American, I think some people of your same race expect something other than fairness. Because my obligation to my community is to be fair to everyone and make sure the system works for everybody, regardless of what their color is, regardless of what their economic status is. And so, I take that obligation very seriously, but I have found, and I'm sure my assistants have found as well, that in that context, folks come in and they say, hey, brother, give me a break because you're a brother, you understand where I came from. And oftentimes you may hear, that why are you prosecuting all these African American folk? Well, regrettably, most of the people in the system are African Americans, and there's nothing I can do about that. But what I can do is to ensure that the system treats them fairly. And they are not treated any better or worse than anybody else. All their rights are substantially protected. They get a fair trial, and if we can give them some consideration, give them a break, then we do. But by the same token, if fairness dictates that somebody be prosecuted to the maximum extent of the law, that's my obligation to my community, and I try to fulfill that obligation to the best of my ability.
George, I know you had some challenges when you were city manager, and you actually wound up suing the city. We won't get into the details of that, but my question to you is because now you're on the city council, you've been able to move beyond that, but were you surprised that you would still have to deal with discrimination issues and things of that sort because you had, quote, made it?
No. I'm not naive enough to not believe the fact that the rules are different for us. In my personal opinion, the rules are extremely different for black males. Having been a father of 3 sons who all gone to the kinds of schools like the Naval Academy, the University of Virginia, and Duke, and I know the difficulties that they've encountered in that particular process. So I know the rules are different, so I was not surprised about the expectations or that kind of a situation. And being where I was and pretty much where I am, you still have to constantly prove yourself. There's an expectation that, well, he's not there because he's competent or capable, or that he knows what he's doing, or that he's a good representative of the process that he's espousing. Is the fact that he's there for some other reason, and you have to constantly deal with that.
Our newest first, clearly, President Barack Obama. From your personal perspective of being first, what did you think about that, and what did you think in your mind in terms of what he may encounter? Because even though it's on different levels, it's still the same, I would imagine, in terms of some things that being a first affords or becomes problematic.
First, like probably everyone, sense of pride that the achievement was there, but at the same time knowing that there were great expectations. Hopes were very, very high, unrealistically. And I think all of us have perhaps been on the receiving end of that, where just because you're there, the expectations perhaps are through the roof. So I think everybody thought the moment he put his hand on the Abraham Lincoln Bible and said, "I'm president now," then all of a sudden the economy would turn around.
Yeah.
So the expectations, particularly from the African American community, were extremely high, but from the country as a whole, extremely high. And that's perhaps why he's under fire now, because people were disappointed. But then again, their expectations were so high, you're going to be disappointed. He's only been there a year.
Is it unfair for people to look at you, Judge Olds, and say, you know what, you're there, you're doing it, and I expect this much from you, as opposed to what they may expect from your other colleagues?
I'd like to think I give more or this much. I was thinking about the question you said about the president, and I think with all of us too, the personal sacrifice, that's something that we don't talk about a lot. People tend to look at you and, as you said, think you've got it made, or what a great position, and it is, and I am grateful, but there's a lot of personal sacrifice. I'm sure, I can't imagine what the president goes through, but you know,
an example of one of your personal sacrifices.
Well, Barbara, you know, I always say being a judge is what I do. It's not who I am. And there are things that I like to do still that I can't do. You know, there are places I'd like to go that I could go to, but it would take on a different meaning. And so I don't do that. So I think there are plenty of things that if I did not have this public face that I could do, that I'd like to do. And then the isolation, you know, even in a daily context, you know, I'm on the side of a building by myself. I walk out of my chambers onto the bench, and that's pretty much it. So there are things that we expect, but again, I know I think about it a lot, but I think in general people tend to look at all of the positives and the bright things, and not so much that.
Howard, let me ask you this, because we don't have a lot of time.
Quickly
go
on
ahead,
the question
on the
you asked,
okay.
I think one of the difficult things about being, quote, first, and I think probably we all sitting here have felt that, is that it's uncharted territory. And there's nobody that has experienced what you've experienced. Nobody else has a frame of reference. So when you're going through difficulties and hardships, there's nobody you can talk to that's been through what you've been through. And so there's a lot to be said when you're in a situation where there are others who've been through it. And you can say, well, this has happened to me. How did you deal with it? Because I know what happened to you. And so, you know, we all have been through uncharted territory in the positions that we've held. And, you know, I can only speak for myself in this regard. You know, you just kind of find yourself lost sometimes. And you got to really feel your way along. And I think that's why, again, I certainly don't mean to speak for anybody else, but I think one of the things that have made me successful, if I am successful at all in this job, is a strong faith, because you got to believe in something higher than yourself when you face the difficulties and challenges that we all face in the positions that we hold. And you got to hold on to that faith as hard as you can, because, again, this is uncharted territory for us.
George, we got about a minute left. Family, other people to support you? As we're just talking about, the lack of maybe support on the job itself. So are you able to turn to friends and family to give you that support?
I have the most fantastic wife that you can imagine.
Yes, you do.
She is an extraordinary lady. She's been in front of me, behind me, beside me, in every particular context that you can think about. The community as a whole, particularly the black community, has been very, very supportive. And there have been members of the majority community who've also been very supportive and shored me up. So I've had support from many, many facets of the community by virtue of the fact that when I did run for elective office, I won that elective office.
That's right.
And I led the campaign in terms of the number of ballots that I received from all the candidates.
And on that note, you guys, I'm sorry. I would love to talk to y'all for the rest of
Let's keep talking.
forever. You know, that's the problem. We get so frustrated because we get into such good conversations. But first of all, you know, as an only, when I was news director at the CBS affiliate here, and the only black female news director at the time, so I appreciate what each of you has experienced. I thank you so much for sharing that with our audience. We really appreciate it, and on our first anniversary too. That's pretty cool. Thank you so very much for joining us today. Yeah. And when we come back, meet some of the folks who make Another View happen. But first, here's what's happening in Hampton Roads.
Congratulations to Another View. 1 whole year. I wish you 10 more. Great success.
Thank you, WHRO, for Another View. And happy anniversary to you, Another View, for a successful and prosperous year for Hampton Roads.
Happy anniversary to Another View.
Hi, I want to thank Another View for your positive impact on our community. And I want to congratulate you on your first year of touching and empowering Hampton Roads.
And it takes a village to produce Another View. The people who operate the cameras, run the teleprompter, research our topics, the list goes on. But 3 people who are absolutely critical to our success: our producer, Lisa Godley, director, Robert Pittman, and our boss, president and CEO of WHRO, Bert Schmidt. A whole year, guys.
It's kind of scary seeing these guys sitting here and wondering who's steering the ship here. Normally they're in the control room, and hopefully it goes off okay.
It will go off fine, I promise you. We did Smoke and Mirrors, didn't we, Robert?
Oh yeah, definitely.
How have you enjoyed directing Another View?
I like the show, and it's a nice show to get into because it's a fast-paced show. It really gives you something to really sink your teeth into when you're directing, and kind of fast-paced, keeps you on your toes. Okay. Makes you move.
Makes you move. Yeah. Lisa, you and I spent a lot of time together, didn't we?
Yes, we.
Coming up with the concept, putting things together. What's your thoughts about the show this first year?
I have enjoyed this more than probably anything that I have done. Just the creative juices, having them flow and being able to be creative and do so many positive stories. People ask me all the time, well, what do you think about that compared to, news? And I was like, I absolutely love it. I could actually exhale. No stress, a little bit, but not as much.
But it also gives you a chance to really take the time to tell a story.
Absolutely. Just flesh it out from beginning to end, and that gives me so much pleasure.
Did you know that there were so many positive things going on? I mean, we have had no problems finding stories.
I knew it, but all you can do sometimes is suggest, and with this vehicle, we can just tell the stories, and it's just wonderful.
Bert, you were the catalyst. I mean, truly, behind this. You and I had that conversation back almost 2 years ago, 2 years ago now, about the fact that we wanted to offer something to the African American community. Are you pleased? Say yes.
Of course. It's funny. It seems just like yesterday that we were planning this program, but it's become such a part of WHRO that it feels like the show's been here a long time. But that planning and all those meetings we had to get this show off the ground seems like just yesterday. But I've been thrilled with the show, and I think you've had some wonderful guests and really explored some very interesting topics that you might not otherwise be able to discuss in other settings.
One thing that people say to me all the time when I meet them on the streets and so forth, particularly those who are not African American, and they said we've learned so much, and that really is our purpose.
Oh, okay. We have conversations on a regular basis in-house about topics that you might not otherwise have, and I think the program is that catalyst to allow you to have that discussion that you might be afraid to bring up. You know, a white guy to ask a black person about a racial topic you might stay away from. But now the show allows that to happen very comfortably.
So, what do you think, Robert? Are we going to make any changes this year, directing-wise?
No, I think it's going to get better, get more interesting. Definitely.
Okay. And Lisa, how do you want people to contact us? We still need more ideas, don't we?
Absolutely. Just email us. Let us know. We will work it out. We will, because we enjoy doing them. We really do.
Well, I really appreciate all of you, because I couldn't do what I do without you guys. And so the show has been a lot of fun, and we're going to continue on, and we're going to make it happen.
Congratulations to you, especially for all the work you've done with this show.
Thank you.
Good
Thank
job.
you so much. And none of this would be possible without our viewing audience. So we thank you, and we invite you to sign up for our eView newsletter, a once-a-week reminder of the upcoming show topics. Visit www.anotherview.tv. Next week, the joys and pains of interracial marriage. We'll see you next time for Another View. Let's bring that cake in.